is Juliana Nickell, and with me is Tanya Finchum. We're with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at the OSU Library. Today is September 6th, 2012, and we're in Enid, Oklahoma, interviewing Patty Nickell and Mike Hronopulos. And they're with the William H. Fox Farm, which is in Kingfisher County. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Patty, I want to start with you. I want you to tell me a little bit about your family and how they came to Oklahoma.
Okay. My mother's family made the run into Oklahoma in 1989. And she was born, my grandmother was born in Honeywell, Kansas. And her father was a doctor and a pharmacist, and he taught school. And that's where my grandfather met her. He was herding cattle and also hunting buffaloes. And he went into the pharmacy and saw my grandmother and was madly in love with this redheaded girl, because she was only about 16 at the time. And he said, boy, I'm going to keep an eye on her over the years. And when I think they got married when she was about 20, and her parents didn't approve at all, because they were, kind of well-educated, and they thought he was kind of a half Cherokee cowboy, which he was. But they lived all their life together, and they lived on the farm till 41. And then they bought a house in Marshall, Oklahoma.
How did they select that piece of land in the run?
Beg your pardon?
How did they come to select that particular piece of land in the run?
Because he was hunted buffalo all in this area and also scouted the army. He knew where all the land was, and he knew he wanted a farm that had a river on it. And their farm has a Skeleton Creek on it. And so when he made the run, he knew exactly where to go. It says in some of the things I've given you that my grandmother, she watched all the people that were going in to get land, watched the horses while they made the run and guarded, made sure no one took them. And after they all got their land, she had some bacon fat, lard, they should call it lard, and hooked a fishing pole out and caught enough fish in the creek to feed all those people. She fried fish. And my two uncles and my aunt were all born in the dugout, which they lived in for quite a while. My mother was the first one actually born with a doctor there. And they lived in the dugout, and then I think after 5 years they had to start building a house. So they built a little log cabin, and then they added around it. They got bigger, bigger, bigger. And it was kind of a nice little farmhouse. But it's not there anymore, except for the original log cabin.
So in those early years, what were some of the crops that they were growing?
Mainly wheat. And across the river, they had a fruit orchard. And they had apple trees, peach, all kinds of, peaches and pears and plum trees. But I don't think they ever farmed anything but wheat. And Mike went by this year, and he said it looked like they had a good crop of wheat this year. This man that lives in Marshall, Jim Yoakum, he's the one that rents the land. and my mother rented it to the same man for years after she. And I still read it for what she read it for, like 40 years ago. Mike says, "Mom, don't you think you ought to read that?" And I just read that someone just rented a farm for $6,000, and he pays $3,000. So I probably do need to up it. But he doesn't live there. He lives in Marshall, and he, in the winter he hauls what's it propane.
Yeah.
So, but he likes it. I don't know. I'd rather have someone there that I know's dependable.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes those people rent it and it's not good.
Well, do you have any memories of your grandmother?
Do I what?
Have any memories of your grandmother?
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, in fact, her last 10 years of her life, she lived here in Enid with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And, we loved going to the farm as little kids. She had a big garden, and we liked to go down to the creek and wade in the creek, and my brother liked to fish, and yeah, it was fun.
Well, you mentioned the dugout, and then how they built the log cabin and built on to it. What are some of the other early structures that you know of that were on the farm?
Well, look in that picture. There was, let's see, they had a barn, and they had a granary, and they had a cellar. Oh, and you can see in the picture they had an outhouse, which I hated, with Sears Roebuck catalog paper.
Chicken coop, Alexa.
Uh-huh.
They always had chickens, right?
Huh?
They always had chickens.
Oh, yeah, she raised chicken. Oh, she'd say, "Patty, go gather the chickens." And I wouldn't even do that. She'd just reach under them. Here she'd have eggs. And every time we'd go, she'd have fried chicken.
Mm.
Well, when she knew we were coming, she went out with her. She had she has a deal like she undid a hanger, and she'd grab that chicken by the leg, and then she'd just wring its neck. And so put it in hot water, Oh, I thought it was awful. She thought nothing about it. She just thought she did every day. And she made biscuits every day all her life until she moved into Marshall, and she got a toaster and never made biscuits again. And every morning my grandfather would say, "Are the biscuits ready, Cora?" Every morning. And sometimes we'd be down there and we'd be trying to sleep. We were little kids. And he'd say, "Are the girls up yet?"
Now we are.
And he'd say, "Billy, you're going to wake them up." As if anyone would. Oh, funny.
Well, when you would visit the farm as a little girl, where would you sleep?
Where did we sleep?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they had an upstairs that my uncle lived in, and then they had a room that was like, I don't know what you called it, but it's where they had a pot-bellied stove and kept the heat, and then a kitchen and a screened-in kitchen. A back porch by the kitchen, which my grandmother was always out there churning butter. I thought that butter was terrible. I wouldn't either. And I wouldn't drink the milk. It wasn't pasteurized. I didn't know, But she was a good cook. Good fried chicken. And they had what they called a parlor, but it had horsehair furniture. You know what that's like? Oh, it's terrible, rough, but she didn't really want anyone to sit down on it. But that's where we slept because it made into a bed, and I did not like that part of it, and I didn't like the outhouse part at all. And then my grandmother had a nice bedroom. Wasn't very big, but big enough for them. And I don't know when. She always had a huge garden, grew everything, and she had my complexion, so she always wore a hat with a big brim, and covered her, just all covered up. And I don't care how hot it was, she didn't want any sun on her. She was a pretty good, those people just knew how to get by. Mm-hmm. And when he, the way he cut the wheat was he had a horse, that pulled this kind of whatever tractor. Well, it wasn't a tractor, I don't know.
A plow.
A plow, yes.
Did your grandparents have jobs outside of the farm?
Mm-mm.
So that's how they made their living.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any idea of the closest place they would take their goods to market?
Marshall. And they had a big oil boom in Roxana, and what's that town just out here where all the oil wells used to be? Covington. Mm-hmm. Huge oil in there, and until last year, that farm was still producing quite a bit of oil, all those years, since back in the 20s. But they called me from the oil company one day last winter and said, we're dismantling the oil well, and do you want to come down and see that we do it? I said, well, I just, at my age, I just don't drive out of town or anything. But I told him to call the man that ran it, Jim Yoakum, and so he went to make sure that they put everything back like it should be and all that. But no, and I don't think my grandmother ever had it. I think she worked in her dad's pharmacy in Honeywell, probably helped, mm-hmm. But actually job, I don't think so.
So the oil on the farm was more supplemental type income.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you recall a time when they had it versus they didn't have the mineral rights?
I just, in the early, when I'd go down there, I don't even remember seeing the oil wells.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I don't know when they actually started.
I only ask because we sometimes find that it made a dramatic difference in, just getting by, and, it's a little easier to breathe.
Yeah. They just lived they were big. They belonged to the Christian church, never missed. My grandmother taught Sunday school for 50 years in Marshall at the Christian church. And I know my grandfather had a Model A with a rumble seat. Mm-hmm. And I can remember one time he said, you girls, my sister was 4 years younger, you girls want to go to Marshall with me? I'm going to go get some groceries. And we said, sure. So we were in the rumble seat. He backed out and just tore someone's license plate off. Just roar. And my grandma would always say, when you say, Goosen, Billy Goosen. And Beryl and I, you just die laughing. So funny. But my sister and I used to take the train. My mother would take us here to the Frisco and would take the train to Marshall. And then we'd walk to my grandparents' house. It was we thought that was a big adventure.
So you were riding the rails pretty early.
I know one time though, when I didn't tell my mother about it right away, but I told her a little later. My little sister was 4 years younger, and one time that guy on the train pulled up her skirt, and I said, "Mother, I'm never letting you go down there again on that train by yourself, either."
Your mother, did she attend country schools?
Mm-hmm. Except she was a privileged one. She was the youngest, so she got to go to Guthrie on the train.
Wow.
For junior high.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to college in Tahlequah, East Central.
Northeastern.
Yeah, it's beautiful over there. Mm-hmm. She loved it over there. But she was the youngest, and things were a little better for her than the others.
And how many siblings did she have?
My mother? Mm-hmm. Three.
Three.
But my brother got killed in a car accident when he was 25.
Okay.
But she had two brothers and a sister.
Oh, my mother had two brothers and a sister. Okay. She was the baby. And her sister always lived in New Mexico. She married a big cattle rancher in Clayton, New Mexico. And we used to go visit them too. That was fun.
Well, when you would have holidays growing up, would you have them at the farm? Like Christmas?
No, I don't really ever remember going there for Christmas. But I think they came here.
Okay. And
I know they always came for the Cherokee Strip Parade. Mm. And they were always rode in the car as the oldest couple in the parade. And they loved that.
And that's a big deal.
Yeah, oh, it was to them, yeah. Convertible, big, yeah. And I know you've heard of Pistol Pete. Mm-hmm. He was one of their very best friends.
Really? Frank Eaton was?
Yes, he was a character. Mm.
Well, with Marshall, they probably knew Angie DeBow as well.
Oh, yeah. They're mentioned in several of her books.
Oh, Angie DeBow was...
she was a neighbor, basically.
She taught at Marshall School. And she told her students, she said, all right, I want to hear some really good written stories. And you're to go over and see Grandma Fox, and she'll tell you all kinds of stories. And sure enough, they did. They'd come over and she'd tell them about, when they came and took her father to the guy. Oh, they had all kinds of good stories to tell. But my grandmother really came from a long line of really good. Elder Brewster was her great grandfather. They came over on the Mayflower. So she has a pretty, really they were all very well educated and intelligent.
I'm not sure if you read this about Cora Fox, her grandmother, but there's a paragraph in here that says the Foxes lived in a dugout for several years, but later built a small cabin on their northeastern Kingfisher County claim near the village of Sheridan. They lived there until 1942, then moved to nearby Marshall in Logan County. There they lived across the street from a school where Angie DeBow, later a prominent Oklahoma historian, taught history. Miss DeBow told her students that each time Miss Debo told her students that each time they came to class with a different original story from Cora Fox about the early days, she would give them an A. Cora made sure that each student who showed up got a different story, later remarking history was a breeze for them that year. So yeah, she knew the Devos very well. And several of her books she mentioned
Yeah.
Billy and Cora Fox.
Well, they kept the farm in Kingfisher, but what motivated them to move to Marshall?
Their age and not being able to,
Work the farm.
so he needed to, just rent it. And actually, my aunt bought that house for him in Marshall, and it was a nice little, nice, safe town. 400 people.
Was it hard to make that transition, you think?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. Not for my grandmother,
Right.
because she had a refrigerator and she could have ice cream and a toaster. She thought it was grand, and she didn't have to make biscuits anymore. My grandfather,
So when they moved to Marshall, did they rent the farm to family, or just to outside renters? Did family lease the land, or just somebody they found?
I don't.
When they moved to Marshall, the people who rented the farm, were they family?
No.
No.
No. Okay.
Mr. Rudy. Oh, I know, and he rented it for years and years and years.
None of your uncles did anything
no.
on the farm.
So your family they weren't interested in farming?
Well, my uncle Leo farmed, but he ended up living way down in southern Oklahoma and had a farm down there. What you went down there one time? What's that? State farm?
Wasn't Wynnewood, was it?
Wilburton.
Wilburton, that's
Yeah,
right.
way down there. And my Aunt Lola, she ended up in New Mexico on $200,000 acre ranches. Poor thing. With 10 jillion cattle.
Did your mom aspire to live the farm life?
No, she. Well, I mean, it was okay, but she, she's a city girl, and she lived in Tulsa for a while. She taught school in Billings. That was her first job. And then she started teaching in Enid. She taught at Roosevelt School. It's not even here. I mean, the city, they don't have it as a grade school, but she taught there, and that's where she met my dad. Because he always grew up in Enid. So, and we lived in South America for 4 years. I was 4 years old when we moved here. We moved back here because my brother, she wanted to start school in Oklahoma. But we lived in Chile. And my mother loved it. My dad loved that. She spoke pretty darn good Spanish. She just learned from.
Were they teaching school down there, or
Was there what?
were they teaching down there?
No. My dad was a nitrate engineer.
Oh, okay.
And there was working for the Guggenheims. Big business. But then during the Depression, they came back to Oklahoma. And stayed. My mother lived here. Well, she was 103. She died in 2003. So, and she was walking the day she died. Didn't have a walker. Never took a medication of it. If her head hurt and I tried to get her to take an aspirin, oh, I don't want any of that drug stuff. I said, Mother, or she'd have a bad cold. Mom, no.
Well, she wouldn't take any over-the-counter drugs, but would she have any home remedies?
Well, a Vaseline. Or what's that stuff you rub on your chest? Bengay. That was her thing. Rub it on your chest. But she was, wasn't she like healthy?
Yeah.
She walked all over this town.
Yeah, in her 90s, she would walk,
I mean,
just miles.
I remember one time my niece said, she called me and said, Patty, Aunt Patty. I said, what? And she said, I just saw your mother. I said, where'd you see her? Well, she was crying O&K, trying to cross over to go. She thought she was going to Central National Bank. That's where her money was. But it was at 8, anytime money, and she didn't anymore understand that why she couldn't go in and write a check. But she was in her 90s then.
Well, through the years, can you talk about how the farm has changed, if it's changed, with what's growing on the farm, or?
Well, it's just the only thing that was there, to my memory, was the wheat and the fruit. And she personally had a huge garden and canned everything, and they had a cellar where they kept it. So they, when they would cut wheat, they would have farm hands, and she fed those guys. I mean, you can imagine how many hungry guys and all the food they ate, but, they had to have help getting it in, and, they didn't have these tractors like they do now. They just, a horse, pulling a plow.
And fat thrashing crews.
And another thing, that I remember her doing, and she always had to take me with her to it, and I always thought it was boring, a quilting bee. All these women sitting at this nothing but quilt. They're out. Oh, you'll have fun, Betty. You gotta go. Well, but that's what they loved. That's what they did to keep busy, and it was social, for them. Seeing all our lady friends and doing something worthwhile, I guess.
When you would visit the farm as a little girl, would you have chores? No.
No, because I wouldn't touch a hen's nest or I didn't want any part of that. And I remember my brother, he just loved going to the barn and watching them milk cows. And they always had a bunch of cats, and then squirt. The cats said they're drinking milk. And one time I said, well, I want to learn how to do that. Big, not good idea at all. I couldn't get anything. But I wouldn't drink that milk anyway. I didn't want to. I wasn't used to. It was not cold. But there she made her butter, and I didn't like that either.
Was your grandfather, was he involved in the farming community? Or
Oh, they were.
they both were, or?
They were very social in anything that had to do with pioneers.
Oh, okay.
And oh, in fact, it says in there she was somewhere. She was president of the, and my grandfather was too. He was. Well, and all those people they knew, they all got together a lot and talked about the old days. You know.
Did they attend church very often?
Beg your pardon?
Did they attend church?
Church?
Uh-huh.
Oh, they would not miss. I mean, they'd have to be really sick. They took that little Model T to Marshall every Sunday, and she taught Sunday school too for 50 years.
Mm.
They were very.
Well, and your grandmother had a couple of brothers that were real well known, the Brewster brothers.
Oh yeah, her.
So they had family.
He was the secretary of the. He's up in the Pioneer. I mean.
Yeah, that's another couple of really
Yeah.
interesting biographies about Cora Fox's brothers. Oscar Brewster, and what was the other one's name?
One of them, the one went to Wyoming. I didn't ever know him.
Yeah, there's a picture of him.
Yeah. But they belonged to something called a Cowpuncher Society, and they had all these. They were real social people.
Well, you mentioned something interesting happened to a part of the old farmhouse. So could you tell me about that?
Well, I think it's been about. How long's it been since they took the farmhouse down?
Oh gosh, what, 20 years probably?
Yeah. But they just kept adding on and building on. And then it'd be up in, it was a nice little farmhouse. I didn't like the horsehair furniture much, but.
Actually, it says in 1994, Marvin Bulis of Pond Creek, Oklahoma, purchased it from the Fox family, dismantled it log by log, reassembled it at his private museum collection in Pond Creek.
Did someone approach the family and say, "Hey, I have this idea"?
Yes, Bob Clemmie.
And I think this would be good to do.
Yeah.
And what were you thinking? Like, you want to do what?
Yeah, he called and he said, I put the sign of the farm, and he said, when they were, taking other stuff around, he said, those logs were perfect because they'd been covered around, and then he said, I think we ought to preserve that, and what do you think? And I said, well, I think that's a great idea. So they did. Have you ever seen it, Mike?
Not since they rebuilt it, no.
So how big is it? What they reassembled?
Oh, small.
Well, it says a 14 by 16 foot cabin.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it fills the front of that museum. It's pretty good size, pretty nice.
Well, that's a good family legacy to have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and when you think coming from a dugout, and finally we actually have a wood burning stove, and they never, to my knowledge, and I'm sure they don't or they never did have electricity. They had those gas lanterns, which, you know, was good for light. And that one stove, wood-burning stove.
You guys probably did a little research into the 101 Ranch, I guess.
Oh, they were huge into that.
Her uncle, Brewster, it says, spent most of his years as the range cook for George W. Miller, founder of the 101 Ranch. And that was your grandmother's brother. So.
Yeah, those people were active socially. And gosh, I remember that Roxana's where they first had the big oil. That town hadn't been there in years, but that was a boon to those farmers.
Huh. Well, you know, you've kept the farm in your family for so long. Why has it been important to keep the farm this whole time?
I have no idea. Well, because they all like to go look at it. And, you know, my mother had owned 2/3 because her sister gave her interest because she took care of my grandmother when she got old. So she had 2/3, and then the other third, as long, you know, all those people originally had are gone, and they're just way down the line. Great people I don't even know. But I've had people want, you know, you want to sell it? And I know my sister didn't ever want to. And her daughters, one of them, Mary Catherine, lives in Norman and works for the university, OU. And the other one lives in New Mexico. But they've never wanted to sell. I mean, it's the only thing they own. You know, their parents have been gone quite a while, and they both, the one in New Mexico, never comes to Shingle by the farm. So it personally means something to them. Now, I haven't been down there in years, but I don't really have any desire to sell it. And then my kids could do what they want to when I'm not around.
Mike, when you were growing up, would you go down to the farm and spend any time on it?
A little bit. You know, when I was old enough to remember, we would go to Marshall, where they'd moved into the city, or the town of Marshall.
Well,
and it was a few miles from the actual farm, so we would go out to the farm.
He wasn't even born when, you know, they were still...
Well, I knew my great-grandmother, but I was just... thought it was interesting. I was looking in here that your grandfather, I guess, died on your birthday.
On the what?
On your birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Right before I was born.
Yeah.
He died in 1951 on October the 28th, which was her birthday.
Yeah.
And I was born in 52, so I never actually got to meet him. But I knew my great-grandmother quite well because she lived with her mother. And I do remember going to the farm, but, you know, at that time nobody actually lived there. But we would go out and go down to the creek, and that was pretty neat as a kid, just to see what it was like. But I try to go by there and look at it occasionally on the way from here back to Norman, because it's right off Highway 51. It's real easy to get to, so enjoy just going out to see it every once in a while.
Is it something special to you to still have that land in your family?
Yeah. be, because they were some
And
of
I think it means a lot to my nieces because their parents are both gone, and that, they know they own something here.
Well, it kind of leads up to, a question we ask all of our farm families is, looking at the next 100 years, I know it's hard to predict, but what do you hope happens to your Centennial Farm? What do you hope will happen?
Well, I hope people are still allowed to be able to own property like that, and we need farmers to do the food. I think it's really important.
I'd like to see it stay in the family if possible.
Yeah.
And, it's just nice to know that, your heritage goes back that far. And you have something there to actually look at and touch and feel. And just knowing that you had one of the original claims from the run in '89 is just kind of a neat thing.
Right.
Well, I think it's the fact they're pioneers. That they lived exceptionally tough times, but in a way exciting. And they did a good job.
They've come a long way from that dugout.
Boy, you aren't kidding. And the same, on the other side of the family, the ones that came in on the train. Gosh, they did well, really well. I just wish my aunt had not sold that land like she did. Waited till he started the overpass. And he knew what was coming. She'd sell it for like $250.
Well, as we wind down, are there any stories about the farm that just really stick out in your mind that we may have missed? Anything? Any special?
The farm here?
Any special memories?
Well, the circus.
Oh, tell us about the circus.
Well, they came right up Frisco, railroad trucks within half a mile of the farm, and then you got to see them march all those elephants and all those tigers, and it was exciting as a little kid. And we got free tickets to the circus, naturally. But I thought that was fun, very fun.
That's probably the first time you've ever seen like an elephant in person.
Well, sure. Yeah, they didn't have zoos back then much.
Would you ever notice hobos or gypsies with the train right there?
Well, I can remember. The times are kind of tough, but I remember one time a man came to Mother and knocked on the door and asked if she had any food he could have. And my mother was very, very outgoing, giving. She brought him right in the house. And he more treated him like a tramp than anything, and sat him down and fixed him up food. But when my father came home, he about had a fit. Korea, you don't know what that man was like. You didn't know him. She said, well, he seemed nice. She thought everybody was nice. So.
It was a different time.
Huh?
It was a different time.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of people that, in the Depression, they were hurt and bad. And just a free meal was something, something.
Do you have anything else, Tanya?
Look at that picture. It's kind of dismal looking.
Well, it's because of the light.
Well, if you don't have anything else to add, well, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate learning a little bit about your family farm in Kingfisher.
Well, that's about all I can say.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.